It is hard to believe things. And oftentimes we even have stuff that we want to believe, but we're stuck in what we call unbelief. I don't believe this. And what I want to offer today is a way to get out of that unbelief. I want to dispel some of the myths about belief. And this is going to be part one of a 3-part series. So we're going to kind of dispel these myths right now. And then we're going to look at some of the tools of believing, how to believe something new. And then we're going to look at the skills. I want to start off by saying that I am 100% on board. I fully support the self-help view of the role that belief plays in our life. Our beliefs create our results. If you were to reveal to me what you believe about yourself and your future, I will be able to predict your future because your beliefs determine your results. But we kind of misunderstand belief. For example, if there was a young female volleyball player who believed that she could play professional volleyball even though she was undersized, then what she would do is she would seek out a volleyball community. She would seek out a coach that could guide her toward this. She would be seeking out information, input that would come into her about how to make this possible. She would go train. She would lift. She would be asking herself, what are the obstacles that prevent me from achieving this and how could I overcome them? She would maybe try to raise her jump, or if that wasn't working out well, she would look at other areas of the game that she could pursue that weren't about getting higher and higher over the net. When someone said, hey, this coach is coming into town or this tournament is on this weekend, she would see those as opportunities. Because she's got this belief that, yes, I can do this. And so she would take those opportunities, she would pursue them. And you would see how this is really going to set her up nicely to one day have the result that she's looking for of playing professional volleyball. Versus someone who has the belief, oh no, I'm too short. Professional volleyball players are all 6 feet and taller. Therefore, I can't do it. That person is going to be presented with opportunities, coaching opportunities, tournament opportunities, all sorts of the same opportunities, but they're going to filter them through their mind as this is not for me. What's the point? Because this will never be successful. They will turn down those opportunities, and then sure enough, they will not play professional volleyball. They may even go try to play a qualifier or something and get beat, and they would be like, see, look, I was right. My belief was accurate. They are buying into the myth that evidence, circumstances, life, it determines belief, that belief is something outside of us that is built or revealed based on the circumstances and evidence that we see in our life rather than the truth that our belief determines our life. That the difference between those two people was belief. Because if it were true that no one could do this because they were underneath this height, then no one underneath that height would have done it. But someone who was 5'6" just won the AVP, the professional tournament in Austin just this last weekend. Yeah, but that's because they stop. That's you finding evidence for your belief right there. As soon as you go down that road, yeah, but I'm going to exclude that one piece of evidence because here's my logic. What? You got to stop going down that road. It's one thing and one thing only. That woman that is 5'6" that won the tournament this weekend believed that she could do it. And the woman who is 5'10" that decided she's too short to try didn't. And that's really all that it comes down to. The key to making this shift, the key to learning how to help your own unbelief or to take on the beliefs that you want, it's in understanding what belief is and what it's not. So we've sort of established belief is not something outside of us that is manifested, that is revealed, that suddenly appears on its own because there's enough evidence or there's enough events or enough circumstances or enough verification or enough proof. You really want to watch out anytime you start using that word enough. Enough is an undefined term. And it doesn't mean anything. And so then when you don't have the belief, you could just say, well, it's because there's not enough evidence yet. If there were more evidence, then I would believe. Once there's enough. Enough is a great indicator that what we're looking at is probably more of a choice than a fact. And so that's one thing that you can check out right there. So then you say, all right, well, then if that's not what belief is, then what is belief? Well, what belief is a filter. It's a filter that determines which evidence we take in and which evidence we discard. And so what we want to do is learn to set the rules on that filter, because the way we set the rules on that filter is going to determine what we call evidence and what we call a fluke, what we call important and what we call unimportant. So belief is not so much this like external thing that manifests within us. Belief is actually a choice that we make. It's a thought that we choose to practice over and over and over again until it becomes default, until we can't help but think it, because now it is a belief. My favorite place to see this play out is in this exchange that happens in John chapter 6. I love the Gospel of John, because the Gospel of John is all about Jesus trying to spread the message that what he wants from people is for them to believe in him. And then you get to see all the different types of people he encounters and how they either resist or accept taking on that belief. And then these exchanges happen, and it teaches us so much about the skill, the choice of believing. So in this particular case, Jesus has just fed the multitudes. He just fed 5,000 men, whatever you take that to mean, 15,000 people plus, with a little bit of bread and some fish. Then the people are looking for him, and they suspect that he has like magically transported from one place to another. So they've just experienced one miracle, and they suspect another miracle has happened also. We know from reading it that he walked on water, met up with the disciples in their boat, and then they did transport to where they were going. But the people are just a little suspicious. Wait, how did he get over there? So let's pick up the story in verse 25. When they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus answered, "Very truly I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you, for on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval." So Jesus is saying, hey, listen, you guys are a little too focused on circumstances and events. I'm asking you to look at what's underneath that. I'm asking you to look at the foundation of what's really going on here, because that's where your true freedom is going to lie. So they catch on to what he's saying here. Do not work for food that spoils, but work for the food that endures. Do the work of God. And so they ask, what must we do to do the works God requires? And Jesus answered, the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. This is where I see Jesus, the life coach, that Jesus knows what we don't, that Jesus understands that belief comes first. That if you take on the belief that this man is the Son of God, then everything he says is going to filter through your belief that the Son of God is saying this. It's going to change the meaning that it has in your life, and it's going to reveal to you the truth of what he's saying. Whereas if you have the filter that this man is tricking us in some way, this is not the Son of God. He's just tricking me and other people, and I need to figure out how he's doing it and stop it. I need to solve the mystery. Well, then everything he does is going to be filtered as a deception, as a trick of some kind, as a mystery that needs to be unraveled, rather than the truth of what it is that's actually going on. And so he could do all the miracles in the world, but if we don't have our filter set with the rule that he is the Son of God, we're never going to see what's really going on here. We're never going to see God at work. And he knows this. And so he says, this is the work of God. Believe in the one that he has sent. But they're stuck in the myth. They still believe that belief is something external that comes from evidence. So they straight up ask him. They say, what sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it's written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. So they even give an example. They're like, listen, you gotta give us some evidence. And here's an example of something that we automatically would believe. Back in the day, our ancestors, they received bread out of thin air. Bread just came out of thin air and they got to eat it. That's the sort of thing that would create automatic belief. Now, if you're familiar with the story, you can go back and read it, or maybe you know already that did not create automatic belief. There was tons of doubt in this scenario because belief is not something external that comes from events or circumstances. It's a choice that has to be made. It has to be the way that you set your filter. But coming back to the story and addressing what's going on here, Jesus responds. He's like, oh, I'll give you bread. If that's an example that you're presenting as something that would cause belief, I'll give you bread. But I'm not talking about ordinary bread. I'm talking about bread that gives life. And so they respond, Sir, always give us this bread. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But as I told you, you've seen me and you still do not believe. You see, he's addressing the myth right here. He knows the filter. If they think this man is tricking us and he says, oh, I'll show you bread. I am the bread. They're like, no, that does not count as evidence. That's just you making stuff up. Whereas if you believe this is the Son of God and he says, I am the bread. I am the bread that gives eternal life. You're like, yes, that totally makes sense. That lines up exactly with all of the story, all of the details that I have in my mind. That fits in perfectly with that. What a cool way to make that clear. And Jesus knows it. That's why he just says to them, look, that's the truth, but I already told you, you're not going to believe this because your filter is set wrong. Because outside of that, you're going to be caught looking for evidence. And I could do all the miracles in the world. But you think that a miracle causes belief, when the truth is a miracle causes a choice. Either to believe that it was a miracle or to believe that there must be some other explanation. So coming back to application to our lives, belief is a practiced thought. It's something that you think over and over again. You think it enough times until you think it automatically. That is what a belief is. Believing is the same as trusting, is the same as choosing. So it's choosing to trust, choosing to believe. And this is the skill of believing, making this choice over and over again. A, recognizing that you have the choice, and B, making this choice over and over again. This is the skill. And it's a skill like playing basketball. It's a skill like painting or drawing. It's a skill like singing. It's one of these things where the more reps you get, the more practice you get, the better you get at it. You're never going to get better at painting by looking at more paintings or better at singing by listening to more singers. You're going to have to practice it. It's something that comes from inside of you. It is a skill. And so you're going to want to get reps at making this choice to trust or to believe. And even the belief that you have right now, if you look back in your life, you'll notice that it comes from a pattern. It comes from a pattern of getting reps at believing something different. That you have lots of reps at believing I'm not good enough. You've got reps at believing I'm not worthy. You've got reps at believing it happens for other people, but it could never happen for me. And that those beliefs are determining your life. That believing, your beliefs are never wrong. What you believe creates the results that you see in your life. As we said right at the top of this podcast, that is the whole deal with beliefs. They create your results. Show me your beliefs and I can predict your future. Now, culture says that negative beliefs are realistic. It says that limiting yourself is realistic. Going big is unrealistic. That's just your head in the clouds. A cool way to see this is if you imagine going into work. If you go into work just like, hey everybody, how you doing? What's going on? Feeling good? And people are like, what got into you? And you're like, I'm just feeling great. And they're like, for what? Like what? You've got to have some evidence for that. Whereas the negative one, they didn't require any evidence. You're just like, things went hard. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Things usually go hard. Life's hard. Everything's negative. And you come on the other side. They're like, what evidence do you have to be that happy? Are you insane or did something happen? There must be something to come into work happy. Well, how come I can come in sad, but I can't come in happy? It's just sort of this like cultural bias that we have toward negative being real and positive being a fantasy. One of the clarities that I've had around the falsehood of this, or a way that I've sort of undone this cultural bias that's in me too, I have the same thing. If I think about a painting, if I say that painting is terrible, I'm actually not insulting the painting. I'm insulting the painter. That the paint doesn't need to question whether it's in the right spots. The painting doesn't need to question whether it's good enough or not. It's really only a reflection of the skill of the painter. And so if I were to take on the belief that I'm unworthy or I'm flawed, I'm broken, I'm not good enough, well, then I'm actually insulting or doubting my maker, the one who made me. And I have the belief that I was made by God. And so it kind of helps me get out of that. Like, oh, I don't know if I want to be in this place of saying that I'm not worthy or I'm not lovable. I mean, it's very tempting. It's a very practiced thought that comes in, but it doesn't really make sense, because then I'm saying he messed up when he made me. Well, that doesn't seem right. And so then I get even a bit more evidence, because I'm walking with Maverick and I'm looking at him in the stroller. And Maverick is my new son. He's 7 weeks old right now. And so I'm looking at Maverick and I'm looking at his face and I'm like, I love this kid. Oh, I love this kid. He's done nothing. Maverick doesn't waste his mental energy thinking, how can I perform better to make my dad love me, to be more lovable to my dad? I just love him. Just all he does is he lays there and then he eats and then he poops and then he cries because he needs more food. So he eats and then he poops and then he cries. That's like all that he does. And I love him. And so I realized that my love for him is not dependent on some sort of performance that he does. It's not on him knowing what's the right thing or the wrong thing to do and then executing it perfectly, doing it enough, right? Like we talked about at the beginning. Does he do enough good things that I can say he's a good person? No, I just love him. I just love him as he is. And maybe I'm the same. Maybe I'm just lovable as I am, and I don't need to waste my time trying to figure out how I can perform well enough to be worthy of love. But I will say this. Just because you believe you're unworthy, it doesn't mean you are. However, the results that you see in your life will reflect your beliefs. If you're constantly believing you're unworthy, you're going to have a lot of what's the point chatter whenever you try to do anything big or anything that improves or anything that's difficult, but it has a high reward on the other side. There's going to be this, what's the point? I can't do it anyway. Well, I'm never going to be good enough to be there. Why am I even trying? And then whoop, right back to old patterns, which may include a lot of buffering, of numbing out from this tension of knowing I want to be there, but I believe that I'm stuck here. If you think about all the times that you backed off or quit because you believed it would never happen for you, that it wasn't going to work, that what's the point anyway? And you ask yourself, well, if I took different action, if I consistently took different action than that, would I have a different result than I have right now? Maybe you can't all believe that you would have achieved what you're trying to achieve, but would I have a different result? Well, of course, different action is going to lead to a different result. So the question is, what belief is driving that action? What belief would be driving that action if you took different action? Or what belief is driving your inaction in the way that it is right now? It's important to be very clear to know exactly what you believe right now, to know what you believe is possible. Because if you believe you can't, you won't. So, awesome. You're like, okay, Jake, I'm on board, whatever. You convinced me. I believe it. I want to have these beliefs. I can even see that if I look at all of the people who I admire, all the people who have gone big, all of the people that have done these amazing things that I look at in my life and I'm like, wow, people do that kind of stuff. If I look at those people, I'm like, yeah, they probably had some belief. They probably had a strong belief that kept them pushing through, and the hard parts that kept them taking action, that they were taking action from a belief that they could do it, that it would work, that they are worthy, that they are lovable, as they are right now. And yet this is still a possible to go, I get it. I believe that stuff. But I don't believe it about me right now. So what do I do about it? And that's where I want to get into these next two videos, is to break that down. I'm not going to just leave you hanging. I'll tell you exactly what it is right now. Is you get clear on what you believe now. And so you can take a look at our products if you come into Trust You. We've got all the videos that break this down. But even, it's all over the place. You just want to see what a thought download is, like how to get what's in your mind out onto paper. It's pretty simple. You just set a timer and you start writing everything that you think. And then you don't try to evaluate it. You go back and evaluate it later. But that's what you want to do first. You want to get clear on what you do believe. And it's a little bit tricky because you got to remove judgment and all that things about it, because some of the things you won't want to see if you have like negative thoughts about yourself, it's kind of, unenjoyable to look at them. And so you want to get that distance and know that you're just being curious and they're just thoughts and you're just looking at these thoughts. And then you want to have clarity on what you like to believe instead. And so that you can see, okay, these are the things I'm believing. These are the things I want to believe. I want to get really clear on becoming aware of when I'm believing this and when I'm believing this. What does this sound like in my head? What does this sound like in my head? What does this feel like in my nervous system? What does this feel like in my nervous system? That way I can see when am I in which one, and I can have that awareness so that I can make the adjustment, which is step 3, to practice the thought that you want, to practice the belief that you want, because a belief is nothing but a practiced thought. I want to leave you with that. So the idea is going to be to get clear on what you believe now, to get clear on what you want to believe in the future, and then practice believing that. And this is where I kind of got frustrated with self-development as a whole, is I was like, what does that mean to practice a thought? And really the only answer I got was you rehearsed it. You rehearsed it over and over again, rehearse it. And I'm like, no, I don't, that's not really working. That's not grabbing belief for me. Like, yes, I can see where that's a part of it, but I think there's more to it. And so that's where I've sort of taken the journey over the last 3 years of for myself, unpacking the tools and the skills that I specifically use to transfer from one belief to another, so that I can be intentionally believing what I want to believe in my life. So start with those 3 steps, get clear on what you're believing, get some clarity on what you want to believe, and then start practicing. You can start by rehearsing. That's a good place to start. But tune in for the next video, because then I'm going to go through these tools and skills to make this actually happen. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Ask Steadfast. Whit and I are super excited to use this avenue to sort of spread our message. And so it would mean a ton to us if you'd subscribe to this channel. Additionally, if you have any questions you'd like to see addressed in future episodes, whether serious or funny, we'd love to see those in the comments. So leave that in the comment below, and we'll see you in the next one.